we're going to walk through and get a little tour of our trial planting. The trees on the end, incidentally, are neem trees. We planted them just to see if they would have any effect on psyllids, which they don't. And so this row that we're looking at here are navel oranges. Again, no foliar sprays in at least 3 years. Slow release fertilizer. Water through the drip irrigation system. There's the drip line down in there. So it's a question of whether or not the tree can work around the various effects that the HLB infection may be causing. Okay, we're walking down the navel row. And you can see these trees look pretty good. Got some fruit on them. Our navels were hit with PSD, same as everybody else's. But again, we didn't spray. So what fruit we got was the consequence of the bloom cycles being such that they were able to produce some fruit even though they got PFD. This is a temple orange tree. And we know that temple is one of the more tolerant varieties with HLB. We've seen that around. And sure enough, with the slow release program, it's growing very nicely, has a good crop of fruit. So temple is an excellent choice. There's a load seed temple out there called the Thoro, available through NVDMC. That would be a good choice. We're planting some ourselves this summer. There's another navel tree. You can see the color. Over here we have a W. Murcott. And the W. Murcotts are in what I would call an intermediate group, where they're not the most tolerant, but they do have the ability to work through and work around HLB. So you can see this tree, you can see signs of sectoring in its earlier life, but now it's coming back and recovering. And we do have some fruit on there coming on. This little group right here are Ortonique. Ortonique is also in what I call the intermediate group, which means that in a commercial situation, to me, you would apply the slow release fertilizer. Excuse me. And but you would also need to spray some foliar sprays and other things to try to help them out. But I think if you do that, then Ortonique is a viable economic choice. Here we've got a Persian lime. It's flourishing, doing quite well. And in Mexico they grow limes instead of lemons. In fact, the word is the same, limon, for the same used for lime and lemon. And the reason is that the lime tree is more tolerant to greasy spot. We'll see a lemon tree in a little bit, and you'll see that the greasy spot really hammers lemons. So when you try to grow lemons in the tropics, you have to really expend a lot of effort to control greasy. Whereas the Mexicans have learned that the limes will grow and flourish without as much care. And sure enough, this one's doing quite well with just a slow release. Here's our personal favorites, Page. Well accepted in the marketplace, wonderful piece of fruit, best tasting citrus there is. Does quite well with HLB, shows good tolerance even without the slow release, but with the slow release, it's just growing and producing its guts out. Well, the fruit's small, which is why it didn't make it commercially in years past, but in the days of cuties and halos, the small size fruit is not as much of an issue. In fact, people prefer it. But you can see the kind of production we're getting on Page here with nothing but slow release fertilizer. We don't think you have to do much spraying at Page once you've got them growing well with the slow release. So the production costs of Page are actually pretty low. Now we're looking at a middle of Valencias, both rows, left and right, are Valencia. Again, no foliar sprays, 3 years. Trees look good, nice flush coming, good crop of fruit. We left last year's crop on the trees just to see, and as you see, some of it is still hanging. So we didn't really see fruit drop in here in the fall like you see in some of the commercial orchards that are under a more conventional fertilizer program. So just a little walking tour. Sorry about the camera jiggling of the Valencias. Valencias are very tolerant to greasy spot, as are navels, which is a prerequisite to a no spray program. In Florida, you cannot get away with a no foliar spray program on varieties that are susceptible to greasy spot, but just so happens Valencias and navels are very, very tolerant of greasy, and that's why they can do better under this no spray program. Again, the point is not that we think people should grow commercial citrus without spraying it. The point is that we don't think you have to spray it as much as people are doing now if you solve the nutrition problem. Here we have Mineola, honeybells. Again, no foliar sprays in at least 3 years, maybe 4. Slow release fertilizer twice a year, Roundup and water. Now it's an isolated group of trees, just this one little row here, so the alternaria hasn't been a particular problem up until now. If you have a solid block of Mineolas that are heavily infested with alternaria, obviously a no spray program is completely out of the question. But we've been holding off, and fortunately the alternaria has been cooperating to prove the point, which is Mineola will grow quite well with only slow release fertilizer and water. It doesn't need a full foliar spray program for the trees to grow. Now with this variety and others, if the need is there to control diseases and other pests, you're going to have to add those sprays. But I think we're close to being able to go back to a classic IPM type program with minimal spray applications if we allow the Tamarixias to flourish and control psyllids, and also allow other beneficials to survive and go back to controlling the other pests. These Mineola trees look pretty good. See some fruit up there in the top. What we're looking at here are wild turkey navels. It's an old line navel selection. We're not exactly sure which one it is. It was growing in the wild turkey grove in Vero Beach that was sold to a developer. But we used to hang these navels on the trees until March up there at Wild Turkey. So it's a very good long late hanging navel. We rescued it, and DPI cleaned it up, got the exocortis out of it, so it's now clean budwood and it'll grow on any rootstock. But they seem to be performing the same as the Glen navels, the ones we first looked at, 5611s. These are Fisher navels down here, which is an early navel available from New Varieties Corporation. That's a Fisher. All the navels seem to be doing quite well and tolerating HOB very well. Now we're on to some different varieties. This is a true lemon, probably a Bierce. Now we're under a no spray program. Lemons are very susceptible to greasy spot. So some varieties have to be sprayed even if you didn't have HOB in order for them to grow well. And we looked at a lime earlier, saw that it was doing well. So this is a lemon. This is what happens when you don't spray lemons for greasy spot. You'll get greasy spot and heavy leaf loss. These little fellas are quichus, Chinese fruit, seedless mandarin, maybe 1.5 inches in diameter. Excellent piece of fruit. These suffered. I had them in the poor to intermediate group, but now they have really recovered. You can look at the fruit load on these quiches. Just incredible. We'll see if they can hold the fruit. That's the other main question, is whether or not the fruit is going to be affected by HLB and drop before it's ready. Another navel tree doing very well. These fellas here are Meyer lemons. Meyer lemon is another one that has flourished under this program. Produces very well every year. Shows more blotchy mottle than some of the other varieties. You know, you look at the navels and Valencias, there's no greening symptoms in the leaves at all. But the Meyers show blotchy mottle, but they still continue to grow and produce quite well. So Meyer lemon is another good variety that I would put in the tolerant group. Here's another true lemon. It is a Lisbon lemon. Bierce, most popular variety in Florida, is a Eureka lemon. These are Lisbons. Probably a Limonera 8A is the most popular variety. They're the kind that they grow mostly in California. The trees are more leggy. The fruit is more of the typical oblong lemon shape. And you can see it's not as susceptible to greasy spot as the Bierce. So we actually had good luck with these in the Yucatan, and I think it's a good choice of a lemon for Florida because of its greasy spot tolerance. Here we have the Early Pride, which is the seedless fall glow. And I have Early Pride in the intermediate group. There are some more Early Prides in this row. And they are surviving with nothing but slow release fertilizer and water, but clearly not flourishing quite as well, for example, as say this navel tree right here. I think in the case of Early Prides and some of the others, Kishu, for example, probably Hamlin oranges, any of the early mids, you're still going to have to do some spraying simply because they're susceptible to other things. So a no-spray program doesn't work with these, but the types of sprays that you have to apply would be for the normal pests and diseases that we always controlled before HLB. And finally we come to the grapefruit section. Now these trees are on exactly the same program as all the rest of the trees in the grove. Slow release fertilizer and no foliar sprays at all. We know that grapefruit is susceptible to greasy spot. It's susceptible to canker, it's susceptible to melanose, various pests and diseases, rust mites and spider mites and that sort of thing. So grapefruit doesn't have enough HLB tolerance to pull it through the challenge that HLB presents. So grapefruit are going to have to be grown with a full court press. Full foliar spray, pest and disease program, antibiotics, foliar nutritionals, as well of course as a slow release fertilizer and probably fertigation. Everything you can do. Joe, just as a bit of a recap, based on our planting here and our observations in other places, I kind of grouped the trees, the varieties, into three groups. One is those that are highly tolerant, like this navel tree here, and Valencia, Page, Nova, Robinson, Temple, Mineola, surprisingly, and a few others are in that group. And then you've got a group that are mildly tolerant, intermediate group I call it, like this Early Pride, and your Hamlins and mid-sweets, all your early mids fall into that group. A few other of the specialty varieties, and then you have the group that aren't very tolerant at all, such as grapefruit, California Valencias, California mandarins, not Valencias. Murcott and a few other varieties just really don't have much ability to withstand greening at all, and you're going to have to grow them on a full life support system.